talking about screaming like, oh. I'm talking about if you could put every emotion of the human spirit, of hopelessness, pain, agony, hatred, all these emotions in frustration, while you're locked in this cage treated like some animal.
This is a behavior modification, psychological, low-intensity warfare against the mind of a human being. That's what exists here at Pelican Bay.
It's not to the point where you want to commit suicide. But sometimes I be at the point that I be wanting to write the judge, say, just give me the death penalty. Just give me the death penalty, man.
Not able to hear voices, to talk to my family. I'm not able to be transferred, to be closer to my family, or to be transferred to a prison where I'm able to see things around me, whether it's trees, grass, birds, other people. I'm not able to go out to a yard and be with other people, get sunlight.
Everything around you becomes numb sometimes. You just, you numb up. You try to, close your feelings off where you don't try to feel nothing. You feel like there's no hope.
I can't touch my mom. When she comes up, it's a long drive up here. I'm only seeing her once a year. For how long? She's already in her 70s. How long, is she gonna live,
I might have to die here. How do I prepare for that?
And then the four of us from different races or geographic areas of the state of California, we volunteered to become the four main representatives of this short quarter collective.
Prisoners in California have entered their fifth day of a hunger strike in a push to end long-term solitary confinement, which they call a form of indefinite state-sanctioned torture.
It's about our being treated like human beings. It's about our 8th Amendment and 14th Amendment rights. From the deprivation of keeping us from our families and our loved ones, harassing our males, everything, the severe isolation, lack of stimulation, lack of education opportunities, rehabilitative opportunities, lack of decent food, lack of proper medical treatment, lack of just human dignity.
hoping that the conditions change back here in this shoe. I'm hoping, I like to hope that this shoe is shut down. I don't think no human being should have to live in this shoe, especially as long as we have lived in the shoe. You know.
For the past 15 years, life for inmate Jeremy Beasley has been simple and stark. 22.5 hours locked alone in a windowless cell. Then, for about 90 minutes, he's moved into a concrete pen without windows. Beasley is one of more than 1,000 inmates who live in these conditions at Pelican Bay State Prison, California's highest security lockup.
I haven't had human contact with anybody without being in chains since 2004. The conditions back here are horrible. You don't get no sunlight. You don't get no. The only exercise is a walk on the yard, which I don't know if you've seen the yards yet. And now we get a stupid handball to throw around the wall. And it's fun for the first 10 minutes when you're out there by yourself. It's a new little toy. But like with any new toy, you get bored of it real quick. You know, I've seen guys lose their minds back here. I've seen guys change. I've changed back here. You know what I mean? I became angry. I became bitter. And even my thought process now is way different from what it was. You know what I mean? I wasn't a saint before. You know what I mean? And to tell you the truth, I don't know how I'm going to react with people when I get out there. I believe that, certain people should be isolated. I believe I'm seeing things a little bit different now. Well, even back then, I mean, I kind of see how CDC has us isolated for who we were, what we've done. But without no sunlight, without going years with no sunlight, going years in isolation, I've seen guys that everybody changes in a certain way. I've seen guys that pull into themselves. I've seen guys that, hear things that ain't there. I've seen guys that anger issues. That's one of the biggest things about being back here is the anger issues, and I have that. I get angry at a drop of a hat for no reason at all, and I was never like that until after 5-6 years back here. It would be nice to look outside. It would be nice to look out a window and see the outside. That would be nice.
When was the last time you saw the moon?
The moon? I don't even know. It would have to have been back in 98.
1998.
Yeah, 1998 at the very least. Yeah.
Stars. Same.
Stars. I haven't seen stars since I came to prison.
You are looking at prisoner 106, on the books as a dangerous armed robber. He is preparing to enter what many call hell on earth, solitary confinement. Before you meet its residents, just listen to them.
This is prison. You know what I mean? We're not here for being nice.
I've seen guys resort to cutting themselves and killing themselves, you know?
As prisoner 106 is moved into the unit,
I don't know that I have ever felt as vulnerable as I do right now.
the thing almost nobody here knows is that this inmate is actually the Secretary of Corrections for the state of New Mexico, Greg Marcantel, a former cop who spent a career putting away bad guys. He's now going to try to spend 48 hours living among the worst of the worst. This surveillance footage shows what these men are capable of if they get loose.
This is a public safety issue.
So why is the secretary willing to put himself through this? He's decided he wants to reform the state's use of solitary because most of these inmates will end up right back on our streets.
We're sending people back to our neighborhoods worse than when they came.
As the clock starts running on his 48-hour lockdown, the secretary settles into his 12-by-7 concrete cell. Level 6 is divided up into 3 separate units, housing a total of 282 inmates. In here for crimes ranging from rape to armed robbery to murder. Combined, these men have killed 138 people. In cell 111 is Freddie Munoz.
This is my home right here. For good or bad, this is it.
Growing up, Munoz wanted to be an astronaut, but at age 13, he got caught up in gangs.
How many murders did you commit? 2 murders.
Because of his violent past and his gang affiliation, prison officials have kept him in a cell like this every day for the past 10 years. These 4 walls are all he's got. He knows every crack, every inch of peeling paint.
What does that do to your head?
It is perpetual misery. It's ennui, it's monotony, it's repetition.
He says the only way to keep it together in here is to establish a strict routine, a sort of imitation of life.
I exercise, I read a lot. If I didn't have books, I probably would have already gone insane.
A few cells away, Daniel Herrera. He's also in solitary because of his gang affiliation. He's 23 years old and serving a sentence for kidnapping.
This is where we live. I mean, right here you can see the width of our rooms.
At our request, he shows us one of the tricks of solitary. This is called fishing.
A fishing line to communicate with neighbors and stuff like that. You send it to your neighbor. So that's how we fish and get things from one cell to another in here without getting caught or getting in trouble.
Back in Secretary Marcantel's cell, 9 hours in, he brushes his teeth and gets ready for a long night in a strange and hidden world. Officer Joseph Vishaway makes his morning rounds. It's chow time.
No, sir. Give some jelly.
When collecting the food trays, Officer Vishaway makes sure nobody has broken off a piece of plastic which could be used to create a weapon.
Is this a dangerous job?
It takes a certain type of person to do it. We're working inside the lion's cage with the lion.
To keep themselves safe, the officers follow rigid protocols. For example, there's a strip search for weapons or contraband every time they take an inmate out to the yard, which is known as the rec cage.
Locked down 23 hours a day, sitting reminiscing on how my life was stripped away.
And coming back is equally coordinated.
Just bringing this inmate from the rec pen into his unit, there's a choreography. Inmates get an hour a day outside of their cell. Being walked back to your cell by 2 guards is probably the only human contact you get all day.
It's 24 hours into his stay, and the confinement is starting to get to the secretary. He's trying to pass the time by working out, but there's only so much of that you can do. Claustrophobia is setting in.
I felt like the cell was kind of squeezing down on me.
He is getting a taste of why this form of punishment has become so controversial. Not only can it be 3 times as expensive as regular incarceration, but critics call it legalized torture. We are social animals. We're built for interaction. Take that away, and critics say inmates can literally lose their minds. But many corrections officials say it's a necessary tool to control a dangerous population. As a prime example, they point to an inmate like Nathaniel Stein.
I don't think I've ever interviewed somebody before who's being restrained by 2 officers. Would you consider yourself a dangerous man?
No.
However, he is in solitary for viciously attacking a corrections officer.
Why did you do that?
That's a tough question. It was just a situation. I don't know why.
I do notice that when you are fessing up to something, you do smile.
I don't know why I do that.
The signal to me is that you don't feel badly about it.
Do I feel bad for the things I do? I don't really feel bad for the things I've done, you know what I mean?
On the flip side, there are inmates like Freddie Munoz, who despite the severity of his crimes, has been a model inmate and renounced his gang affiliation. Munoz is now one of a select few handpicked to move out of solitary and into the general population of the prison as part of the Secretary's plan to reduce the population in solitary.
To be able to go outside without being handcuffed and restrained every day, I think that would be very good for me.
It's the final morning for this undercover boss. Finally, the moment he's been waiting for. Release. After 48 hours on the inside, he's concluded solitary should be used, but sparingly and only for the most dangerous.
You're going to have people who say any more than 30 days is torture. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't. There is a such thing as evil. And it's up to me to make sure that not only am I protecting other inmates from them, but I'm also protecting my staff from them.
Days later, Freddie Munoz, Daniel Herrera, and 6 other inmates are brought out of level 6 solitary in preparation for an eventual return to the general prison population. Here, for the first time in years, they'll actually be able to sit next to one another and have real human contact.
How does it feel?
It's good.
Sitting next to each other.
It's great. Good. This is living right here, finally.
These men, part of an experiment and part of a trend as New Mexico and the nation take its first steps away from this costly, controversial form of punishment. For Nightline, this is Dan Harris in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
My name is Robert Lee Smith Jr. I've been here since 1993, and I'm a death row inmate.
My name is Jarvis Masters. I've been in San Quentin for 35 years, and I came here when I was 19 years old.
You guys do a sweep? Sure, we got everybody.
I've admitted to my crimes. I confessed. I pled guilty, and I've said from the outset that I deserve capital punishment.
My name is Charles Smith, 46 years old. I've been convicted of 4 gang murders, and I was sentenced to death. Step back away from the cell, please.
I've been here 33 years at San Quentin, 35 years since my arrest back in 1980.
I was an evil person. I don't know any other way to put it. You know, I didn't care for other people's lives. I was an adult, and I chose to do what I did.
You damage a lot of people when you do crimes like the ones I did, robberies. And how do you take that back, you know? You don't. You just acknowledge that you did something that hurted someone, and it hurt, you know, and it tears you up too, because you know that you were 19 years old. And when you try not to make an excuse for it, then that's where you're really taking on a lot of pain and suffering.
There is such a thing as evil, and some people are evil.
You think you're no longer evil?
Yes, I'm no longer evil.
What changed? What flipped the switch?
Well, my acceptance of Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. play some hoops, and do a lot of praying, reading, studying the Bible, trying to be a blessing in people's lives.
It is hard, I'm not gonna tell you no. Just draw. I do stuff like this. Try to keep my mind straight.
Try to make friends in here that understand that this is a long journey. No matter if they innocent or they believe they're innocent or not.
I've made some friends here, but most of them are dead now. A couple got executed, mostly health issues, a couple suicides.
I don't think it should be a death penalty. Well, if you think about it, like, you know, you killing someone because a crime, you know, a crime that they may have committed, what make you different from the person that's a murderer on the streets? If you know you're gonna execute a person, what make you different? In God's eyes, you ain't no different.
There are a lot of people on death row who've committed very serious crimes, and everyone has been convicted of murder. But as far as who actually gets a death penalty, I think that seems arbitrary to me.
I don't think I'll die here. Not because of just hope. I just honestly believe in my spirit that I won't die for something that I didn't commit.
Well, if they take me downstairs to execute me, I would assume it's God's will, and I expect to go to heaven after I die.
I can't live one way thinking I'm going to always get out. Right. And I can't live the other way thinking I'm always going to stay in. Somehow I have to find resolution with both. All I can say is if you sitting in here and you like basically being, waiting to be executed, yeah, that's a threat. You know, at any time, once your appellate, all your appellate rights is up, they can come get you and execute you. That's a threat. It's always on your mind. It's always in the back of your head, right?
When it's time to do a lot of grunt labor, these guys are some workhorses. Get a lot of stuff done with 16 bodies. This was the front lines of the fire yesterday. This was a big slop over this whole thing here. It jumped the dozer line there, and the crews actually came in here while this was burning and pulled the material away and actually stopped this fire in here.
Should be saturated enough. I said it should be saturated enough. I don't see smoke coming from up here.
It's rugged. I mean, a lot of mountains, a lot of rough terrain, then the thick brush, the heat. I mean, you get to venture out. I know there's a little bit more freedom out this way. You know what I mean? We're supposed to be behind the wall. We eat a whole lot better. That's one of the pluses, and we get out every day. There's enough wet mud in there to smother it with?
Yeah, it's one pretty great dude.
All right, I'm pull this hose up.
They live together in the barracks together. They all ride on the same bus together. They eat together. You know, when we're out at base camp and stuff, they shower together, and so they don't have any choice but to be with each other all the time.
These guys are been battling fire now for going on 7 days, so they start to deal with injuries and they're tired. Combination of the heat and the smoke, and you come back here to get a shower and a fresh meal.
Last night they worked really hard. They were in the Sierra Division unit over here, and then they come down, and this is the result.
This is my 4th season here. I've been at Sugar Pine Camp for 4 years, and I like almost every aspect of it. I mean, you know, some of it kind of sucks, but what can you do? It is what it is. What you do really makes a difference. You know, if it wasn't for boots on the ground, these fires would get a lot bigger than they were. Well, you got to do a lot of hard work, but it's not just the walls that you get rid of. The way the staff treats you is way different. I mean, you learn a lot about yourself. You learn that there's stuff you can put yourself through that you never would have thought you'd been able to do. I wouldn't have traded this time for nothing.
Hundreds of inmates here at Solano Prison in Vacaville are hoping for a second chance, parole, and California officials think the key is rehabilitation.
Hurt people, hurt people.
These prisoners are doing sentences like 25 years to life, some for the most heinous crimes imaginable.
The hurt that we carry, we take it out on somebody else.
They don't know if they'll ever get out. Still, they're trying to understand what went wrong and how they ended up here.
I seen your hand up, Mr. Glass.
You know, one of my biggest fears in the past was rejection, right? And communication skills were lacking, to say the least, because of my alcohol and drug abuse.
In my family, a lot of it always went back to, you know, quit complaining, I'll give you something to cry about.
Some of these inmates are trained to work as mentors to fellow offenders. Take Jose Hernandez.
We can't do nothing to change the past of what we did because it's written in permanent ink. But we do have a choice today. We have the tools now that we didn't have 20 or 25 years ago.
In 1993, Hernandez strangled his ex-girlfriend to death. Last year, the parole board found him suitable for release, but Governor Brown reversed it, saying he thought Hernandez was too high a risk to public safety.
I'm going to go back to the board, and I'm going to go back to the psychologist and be as best as a person as I can be every single day.
Programs like these are part of a major shift that Jerry Brown has brought to criminal justice. For the first time in decades, rehabilitation for long-term inmates is a funding priority. Some classes are being aimed directly at lifers, from anger management to how to reconcile with their own family members if they're released.
The situation.
Instructor LaWanda Green is working with these inmates on developing empathy for their victim.
Probably I'm at a point where I don't care anymore, right? Because somebody caused me to be a victim. The toughest part is when you have the person who believes they were valid in doing their crime, the gang-related crime where they believe it was either me or them. I had no other way to make another decision.
Today is graduation for one group of lifers who've completed a series of classes.
I'm really grateful to be here. I've never done this before.
The special guest is not a typical graduation speaker. 6 years ago, Teresa Cordemanche lost her son Matt, a Fairfield City councilman who was shot and killed at age 22, a victim of mistaken identity. She remembers the night she got the call.
It was my friend Terry, and she said, I think Matt got shot. I'm like, what? And she goes, yeah. She said, I think he got shot. And I said, okay, let me go. Let me call his phone. And I kept calling his phone and he didn't answer.
This is one way that inmates hear about the impact crime has on their victims and families. James Ward responds passionately.
I could do 1,000 years in prison, 10,000 years in prison, and it would never match what you've gone through. So, when you think about unfairness, my fellow murderers, think about her. And that is real unfairness. Can I say that I have been treated unfairly because the governor pulls my date?
Ward has spent half his life in prison for killing his ex-girlfriend over 30 years ago. He's now 64. After being turned down 5 times, he was recently found suitable for parole and will be released November 5th, unless Governor Brown blocks it.
Pleased I want to get out of prison, but I understand the cost that symbolizes.
Ward says the classes inside prison have helped him understand the pain he's caused others.
I have the opportunity to get found suitable and get out and pick up the pieces of my life. They don't have any place where they can go appeal and say, bring my loved one back. They don't have that. So that's, I think about that.
Mr. Sternberg.
In past decades, only a trickle of lifers got out. Parole boards were conservative, and past governors reversed up to 95% of parole recommendations. But a 2008 state Supreme Court ruling made it harder to deny parole on the basis of the crime itself. Since then, nearly 2,300 lifers have gotten out. Deputy Director for Rehabilitation Roger Meyer says it's now a priority to help these offenders prepare for life on the outside.
Some of these inmates, when they came to prison, there were no cell phones. They've never used an ATM before. For 20-some years, they've been told what to eat, what to wear, when to get up, when to report. It would be remiss if we didn't try to ensure that they are successful when they do go out to society.
These programs promote personal growth for the inmates and help show they're suitable for parole. Rehabilitation also reduces the chance that offenders will commit new crimes, says Cynthia Flores de Lyon, who heads the Office of Victim Rights and Services.
It's an opportunity for them to now internalize and say, okay, how can I make my life better so that I can get out and be successful and not re-victimize?
In fact, statistics show that lifers who get out are among the least likely to commit another felony, says UC Berkeley criminologist Barry Crisberg.
Now, part of that is because they stay such a long time, and when they get out, they're pretty old. I mean, the single thing we know from criminology is that getting older reduces your probability of committing crime. If you combine that with programs preparing people for release, you can make those rates even better.
I'm thankful that I have that I can share with them.
For Bridget Fitting-Nevin, statistics are no reassurance. Her father, Timothy Fitting, was killed in 1990 by an employee who struck him in the head with a wrench 24 times.
If you cross that line, that you're capable of crossing that line in the future. There was always this comfort that I had, knowing that this person was in jail and that, I was protected from that. This is put together by our family.
In June, her father's killer was found suitable for parole. Nevin worries that the programs inside prison are coaching offenders on what to say to the parole board.
Our community, I feel, at large, is put into a vulnerable situation. It's, in my humble opinion, some of these parolees are ticking time bombs. We're basing all our comfort on statistic probability that now these individuals aren't capable of committing crimes, just based on their age.
Nevin will urge the governor to reverse parole for her father's killer. For lifers who are found suitable for parole, freedom brings new challenges. Here in downtown Berkeley, the nonprofit Options Recovery Services offers ex-offenders a place to land when they get out. Tom Gorham is program director.
When we started Options Recovery Services, we didn't have housing. We didn't have a mental health clinic. And this program is built on what clients show us that they need. And one thing they needed was a safe place to stay.
2 years ago, that's what David Hillary was looking for. He had been granted parole after serving 18 years on a life sentence for second-degree murder.
What do I do? It's like, I've been gone for 18 years. I didn't have a driver's license. I didn't have insurance. I'm on parole. I don't have a doctor. Finding these little nuances of what being a responsible man was, learning that is a tall task.
While behind bars, Hillary obtained certification to work as a substance abuse counselor through a program run by Options. After his release, Options gave Hillary a room in transitional housing and put him to work, teaching classes for recovering addicts at Options.
So, two things in life that show up quite frequently: triggers and warning signs. What is the difference?
For some reason, me and my boyfriend.
But my amends is living different, because I don't necessarily believe I have the right to a second chance. I believe that if you see my actions are indicative of a different person, have some compassion.
California still has some 26,000 lifers in prison, more than any other state. Criminologist Barry Crisberg says there's no one-size-fits-all solution to crime and punishment.
The issue is not punishment. We're going to punish these people. The question is, what's enough? You know, is 20 years enough? Is 25 years enough? Is 35 years enough?
As policymakers grapple with that question, the state hopes to expand programs to help more lifers win freedom.
When a person decides to change, they want everyone to know that they've changed. So it's important for them to get that out. Television portrays prison as this negative place where people just are running around being violent, but San Quentin is actually totally opposite from that. You guys are going to college every day. They're going to self-help groups. They're going to religious services. Everyone here is trying to get out of prison, not stay in prison.
Count me down, G.
All right, y'all. Back in action, everybody.
I got to San Quentin in 1984 via LA County Jail. Now, I was told that
since 2012, we've been working on a storytelling project. And really, the overarching idea is to tell the hidden stories of life inside, told from the perspective of those who live it.
As soon as I got out the bus, I got extra chilly and cold because I wasn't wearing underwear. See, that's how they transported us back in the day. Butt naked with a red jumpsuit on. So if the bus crashed or you escaped, you came out the jumpsuit, you'd be running around naked.
This project was put together by the San Quentin Media Production Team.
I can't joke. I'm nervous. That's what this is.
We all come up with these ideas and help the men edit the stories and present them.
So I covered myself in tattoos of hate and violence.
And it gives other guys who may sit back and not really want to be out on the spotlight, it gives them a little more courage to say, okay, well, I might be able to do that one day.
And more than anything, that really scared me.
I think it also makes vulnerability look okay. Because if you can be vulnerable in front of this group and tell your story, it's another way of breaking down the barrier.
People was bullying me in school. And because I didn't want to disappoint my pops and get kicked out, I took it. And at that moment, I turned around and I walked away and a tear came on my eye because I thought, like, what I done got myself into.
I hate mornings. There's nothing worse than waking up from your dreams to a cell whose 6x9 confines stretch into the horizons of your future. It's like waking up in a tomb. It's a reminder that to society, your family, your friends, to your high school sweetheart, you're dead.
People have their own preconceptions about what people in prison are about. And I think these pieces break down those walls. It's more complex than what your prejudices are.
We did a skit where I portrayed someone living an alternative lifestyle. And surprisingly enough, I really had the time of my life. I mean, I was on stage talking about, no, you didn't. Hold up, hold up. Now, I am all woman, honey, and still more than a man than you will ever be. Okay?
People in prison are people. There are some very bad people, and there are some people who made some mistakes, but ultimately they're people, and they're as complex as you and I and the rest of society is.
One thing I am not is some goody-goody who thinks he's a great guy now for taking all these groups at San Quentin. Because when I look at what I've done, which is commit 2 murders, I know I can never call myself a great guy. I've taken lives. I've hurt 2 families in ways that I can never fix. I've hurt my family, my community. So calling myself a great guy just isn't possible.
People, we work hard to change our lives. We want to be different. We don't want to be that same person that we used to be.
It taught me to connect the pain in my mom's cries to the cries of my victims' families.
Now, 21 years later, my incarceration, I'm here to help everybody tell their story.
It put me on a path to see these painful truths about myself, but it also showed me that being able to change my life isn't just a mandatory part of my sentence. It's a blessing, which does not make me a great guy. It's the best that I can be. Thank you.
By my way, yeah. By my way, yeah. By my way, yeah.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Azrael Big Az Ford, and this is my Life of the Law speech. I grew up in a community of Southern California where drugs and crime ruled the day. And by the time I was 21, I can recall every one of my friends had been to prison already. It wasn't a place where a kid could grow into a good man. So I covered myself in tattoos of hate and violence. I considered that like my suit of armor. I was sentenced to 29 years at the age of 27 for assault with a firearm. And when I entered the state prison system, I felt like I'd found a world where I was validated. It was a place where I was allowed to hate. I was embraced for hating. I was embraced for being violent. And so I walked in this world like a dark night. I let people know, hey, if you mess with me, I'm gonna mess you up, because that's how life is in here, or that's what we tell ourselves. But then I hear about the Shakespeare group. I'm all, San Quentin Shakespeare, you have to be kidding me. But I go, all right, I'll check it out, and I go in there, and they're like, okay, we're gonna, pretend to be nature. So I guys, pretend to be a bee. What? I'm 280 pounds, how am I gonna be a bee, right? I'll just pretend. I'm like, all right, I'll pretend. Well, now I was be a butterfly. A butterfly? Who, me? I'm not a butterfly. But you know what? I tried it. So I flapped my wings, and people are being rabbits, and people are being rocks, and here I'm this butterfly flying around, and I start to laugh, and it's like, okay, this is pretty cool. Because when you laugh, you experience something that's, it takes you beyond, the negativity. So I start to go, and then they give us the play that they want to do, and it's Julius Caesar. And everybody's like, Az, you're going to make a great Julius Caesar. And I'm like, yeah, all right, I guess, but I don't think so, because I've never acted before. Here's my resume. I've been a bee and a butterfly. Now you want me to be Julius Caesar. But okay, so I get cast as Julius Caesar.
Mark Antony, Caesar, my lord. Forget not your speed, Mark Antony.
And there was a guy, his name's Lee. They call him Maverick. And he was playing Mark Antony, Caesar's best friend, almost like his brother. And the funny thing is, Lee Maverick, he's black. I'm white, right? That usually doesn't happen in prison. So now we're acting, we have to be best friends. We're comrades. We're like brothers. So they bring in the costumes and I put it on, right? And the tunic that they got for me, It's really tight. It's like everything was for small people, and it's riding up, and I'm like, all right, cool, but we do the play, and the Senate kills Caesar. So I'm laying there on the stage dead, and Maverick comes up, and he heaves me on his shoulder. And he gets me up there, and I'm playing dead. Well, that tight tunic, when he slid me across the stage, it pulled up. And now my butt's hanging out. And I can't do anything because I'm supposed to be dead, and that's, acting's an art. You have to be dead when you're dead. So I'm over Maverick's shoulder, and he carries me out of the chapel, and you hear this laughter, and it's like they're not laughing at me. Like, they're laughing at what we're giving them, what we're sharing with them. We're making these people feel good, which is something that, people don't really expect prisoners to do. And it was at that moment that I realized, like, hey, you know what? The goodness is back. I found it. I found it in myself, but I've also found it in the community at San Quentin with the men who, they inspire that in each other. They're bent on reaching that goal. They want to be good people again. They want to give back. And that was just like, I looked at the people that had acted in the Shakespeare with me, and I saw their beauty. I saw those roses. So if we'd all just take time to just nurture that rose that's within us, we could all just be beautiful flowers. Thank you.
My name is Eric Lamont Durr. I got to San Quentin in 1984. Now, it was told to me that San Quentin was one of the most violent prisons in California. And all I need to know was safety first, keep my head on the swivel, and as soon as I get situated, get a knife. Now, a lot of guys tougher than me didn't make it. A lot of guys weaker than me didn't make it. A lot of guards didn't make it. After running with the fellas for so long, my bad behavior and actions, my non-humanitarian thoughts, I got lucky. I got transferred. I made my way around to all the other different prisons. Now I'm back to the 2016, the more rehabilitative San Quentin. They have volunteers coming in teaching nonviolent conflict resolutions. It taught me the word stop, S-T-O-P, stop, think, observe, and process situations. Situations that can become nonviolent, situations that are already violent, how not to overreact. Boy, I love you white people coming in and teaching me this stuff. I love it. Now, in here, we live in a closet, a one-man closet with two men in it. A sink, a toilet, no window. We all get them guys sometime that don't want to go nowhere. They move in the cell, they just want to stay there. 24 hours out of the day, they just want to be there. Now, they moved me with this cat. He tell me, let me tell you something about myself. I said, go ahead. He said, I don't do self-help. I don't go to the yard. I don't work. When I go eat, I come back. When I go to the doctor, I come back. When I go shower, I come back. I said, well, what about me? Don't I get some me time or something? He say, get it any way you can. Now, the old me at that precise moment, I'd have just slapped him. I'd have just initiated contact. No matter who he was, who he knew, I'd have just initiated the get down. But the new me, the soft Eric Lamont Durr, looked at him and said, do you like football? He said, yeah. I said, I like football too on Sundays. I said, but when I watch football naked. And while I'm watching football, I eat nachos naked. I call it Naked Nacho Sunday. You should have seen his face. He looked at me like, uh-oh. So at that precise moment, they said, chow time, that means go eat. So I went to go eat, and when I was coming back, one of my boys was coming down the tier, and he said, hey, Dirt, didn't you move in 79? I said, yeah. He said, you moved in with that cat that don't go nowhere. I said, yeah. He said, well, I just looked in there, and nothing in there but your stuff. I said, well, there you have it. He said, have what? I said, I guess he went somewhere. Nonviolent communication. Now, I'm so dedicated to nonviolence, the new Eric Lamont Durr, you got all those websites out there. I'm going to get me one. www. Who Knows Crime Better. Ask the Convict, the new Eric Lamont Durr. Thank you.
I'll never forget my first morning at San Quentin. So it's breakfast time, and I step into this chow hall, this noisy chow hall, and I'm wondering to myself, what the hell do all these people have to talk about at 5 in the morning? This correctional officer, he says to me, "How you doing this morning?" At first I give him a double take because I think he's messing with me. I just don't have the precedent to process this kind act. In High Desert, a maximum security prison where I did most of my time, an officer would just never ask me how I was doing. It just didn't happen in that environment. But I'm looking at this guy as I'm moving through the chow line, and he's nodding, he's kind of encouraging, and I realize this guy is serious. He really wants to know how I'm doing. So I tell him, I'm like, I'm good. You good? He's nodding his head, thumbs up. He's smiling, I'm smiling. I move ahead in the line and move into the next section of the chow hall. The encounter ends. But the smile continues. See, this officer, he probably didn't know it, but because he took the time to connect with my humanity when he didn't have to, I suddenly felt inspired to connect with everyone around me. I asked more people that day how they were doing than I had asked since I've been incarcerated. And I learned something, the power that an individual has to change the world with something as small as, "How are you doing this morning?" See, because his words, they lifted my mood. And because I was happier throughout the day, I was kinder. And so I envisioned this cycle where my kindness makes someone else kinder, which makes someone else kinder, which lifts someone else up until we're all smiling on top of the world. Now, I don't want to represent that all correctional officers are humanitarians, because they're just not. But I also think it's important to note that this wasn't just like a fluke. See, I live in West Block on the 4th tier, and every night I hear this officer as he's walking down the tier at last count time. And the reason why I hear him because he's stopping at guys' cell, asking them about their day, and he's just doing the things that human beings do when they want each other to know that you matter. And so every night when he comes by my cell, I stop whatever I'm doing, whether I'm watching TV or reading a book, and I'm like, "Good night, brother." And he continues with the count, getting ready to go home to his family, but before he leaves, he says, "Good night, brothers. Gentlemen, lady, good night."